For someone like you that is walking around like an amber of a cigarette and everything gets you high, which welcome to the club, my friend. I love it. It's like that's what I experience. I've experienced that my whole biological journey, and there's nothing more powerful.
Or using certain design principles, not externally, because I'm more interested in the using
Internal.
of sacred geometry internally. And if you do use them, which ones do you use? Because the whole thing about sacred geometry is that it's universal language. So
Sure.
we should find commonalities between like Taoism with other traditions. And so which sort of shapes, if you're doing like an advanced meditation technique,
Right.
does it
Right.
involve a sacred geometry projection of some kind, or it doesn't need to be?
Well, you know, when you walk the path of a Taoist, reality is a bellows. That means you are contracting and expanding at the same time. You're all things and nothing at the same time. And when you realize this, when you're at your lowest, you're at your highest. So you can instantly merge with all things. The present moment, I've never witnessed a physical, mental, emotional, spiritual healing that has not been this present moment. That means I'm no place, no person, no thing. I'm not attempting to call in angels or sit in a lotus
Mhm.
position, light 3 incense, conjure this state. That is the now moment.
Mhm.
So when it's what we call detaching and then attaching as the primordial mother. It's a cultivational practice. When you acquire it, wherever your eyes go, kaboom. As the old expression, where your attention goes, the energy flows. It's conceptual for most people until you acquire that mastery. We use star stepping and other ancient rituals to master and commandeer the energy throughout this material state. So we're constantly using the universe because we have a very intimate relationship with the universe. This is the very creation of Daoist alchemy. Was one of my teachers that I channeled, the Yellow Emperor, directly, who was the creator of Chinese culture as we know it today. And there is further evidence on a human timeline of the oracle bone reading and the pictographs that were accumulated as he was transcribing the information from the whispers of the universe to his creation of Daoist alchemy that then led into the fundamentals of Chinese medicine that they use today within, seven reiterations of like their language through seven emperors that brings Chinese culture back up to, this sort of like symbiotic relationship between Mandarin and Cantonese. And really, there's all these offsprouts and variables throughout China. You go from one town to another, and there is a variable of the language. I imagine for yourself, when you're in Iran, there's probably variables of that language depending upon where you
Yeah,
are in the country, right?
yeah.
So when you're talking about shapes, absolutely
Mhm.
everything has a center point.
Mhm.
This has a center point.
Mhm.
This when I hold this up and you get a chill through your body, it's like, hang on a second, what's going on here? This has energy potential. And
Mhm.
so when you find that center point, you then get into what we call psychometry and sensory perception. Some people call it synesthesia, where you are now seeing the colors that you're hearing and hearing the colors that you're seeing, and you're
Mhm.
experiencing it. There are very, I mean, you could go, honestly, sensory perception is limited to nothing but your imagination, but you must master the imagination. So, for example, we use the Tao Te Ching as a magical register. So every verse is an incantation. Each incantation has 81 levels of consciousness. It has a frequency, it has a color and a shape associated with that. And it is an experience. And the wisdom teaching is second to none. And so there is a value to what you talk about when it comes to sacred geometry. There is a value to that, but the potential has to be acquired. it's a lot of nonsensical rubbish from most people because they don't have the development skill. Like you
Yes,
call
yeah.
it the subtle body. There's no subtle body in the Taoist
I
path. That's yeah. Go ahead.
I'm with you 100%. So you need to master the imagination, also attention, because you need to focus on creating certain shapes in your
That
energy.
comes with the development though. So
Yeah.
what happens is
Uh,
once I create the harmony of those elements within your energy architecture,
mhm.
that is it happens on its own. You're not having to apply yourself because the biggest mistake is you are the problem. The second you move out of the way, perfection is evident. Your participation is not required. Does that make
Mhm.
sense?
Yeah, yeah.
There's no
Do,
participation, but there's a path of that feeling into it. So
do
if you're
you
thinking you're not knowing, you're knowing you're feeling. Go ahead.
do you mean a master, like a Daoist master or some kind of master, sort of activating me, or is that what you're speaking
Well,
of?
yeah. Well, what happens is you cultivate, you follow the instruction of the cultivate. This is the most powerful, potent part of alchemy for
Hmm.
Taoists.
Hmm.
Is if you follow the direction, you will acquire the skill. It's not like because it's
Yeah.
already there. This is
So
not a this is
let,
not a point of contention or a maybe of
no,
potential
I'm with you.
for real.
Let's go in detail about the practices that involve becoming a master of this energy. So for Taoism, is it Qigong that is like the
Well, qigong is kind of like a dirty word they throw around. It just makes it easy. Oh, I know what that is. I can sit here and I can move my hands around and I can feel the energy. And they say that I'm using the five elements. And quite frankly, if you just talk down to a neurological perspective, you're activating mechanoreceptors or deactivating nociceptors within the neuroplasticity of your body. So any type of movement is going to create some level of reducing the startle reflex or the threat level of the nervous system, which opens access to this autonomous parasympathetic response that you get within your physical body. It's like, well, how nice is that? Just tiptoeing through the daisy. So I'm going to dismiss Qigong because there's so many bastardized versions of
I
that stuff. But Nigong and Nidan, which Nidan is internal alchemy, Nigong is internal power that you acquire from the internal alchemy. Now we're getting down with the get down because I
mhm.
teach differently than anyone else, and I've yet to see anyone. There's a lot of like diluted versions of internal alchemy, Taoist internal alchemy. Furthermore, the most bastardized and abused
Mhm.
practice would be microcosmic orbit. Oh my goodness, that has been that has been crapped on so many times, and it's never ever the complete. And that's the biggest misconception. People get variables.
If somebody like me wanted to sort of partake on the Taoist path to master one's energy, so what are the steps and where do we go?
Well, first of all, you must be human. You must have a nervous system. I always tell
I
people,
think I do.
anyone that wants to master this stuff, as long as you're a human being, you have a nervous system, it's going to happen for you. On the other hand, if you are an alien, I haven't applied this same mastery to an alien. So I can't, full
Yeah.
disclosure, I can't tell you that this is true
Yeah.
for an alien. But quite frankly, the amount of aliens I've seen in people's auras over the last 10 years, it's starting to get to an epic level of either a psyop to dilute the actual narrative and it's mind control at another level because this is what happens when you get groupthink. There are a lot of people that are falling into that state where it's a relationship with this potential of extraterrestrial activity. 30 years ago, when I was doing this stuff, one of the masteries of a Daoist priest is exorcisms. That's just the run of the mill everyday thing. We do this all
Yeah.
the time.
Hmm.
And quite frankly, I would have a lot of people on my doorstep with psychotic episodes, or they have nowhere to go. It's not working. They're going to put me in a padded room. When you exercise that energy, all of a sudden they feel liberated and they realize that they have dominion over themselves. And it wasn't because they didn't know how to turn the switch off. They're
Mm.
experiencing what they're experiencing. There's no question about it. They're hearing voices, they're seeing things, but they have a missing component within their energy potential that makes it impossible for them to turn it off. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah. So I'd love to speak to you about aliens as well, but before that, if I want to partake on the
Yeah.
Taoist path, what
Yeah.
practices? So can I do it by myself? If not,
If you follow it, I mean,
yeah,
most of my students will fly in from all over the world. They stay for an hour with me once a month. I give
yeah,
them a month of training and then they disappear and they
yeah.
come back.
So it
But you
can be
have to acquire these points,
okay.
and it's up for you to invest in your
Yeah,
cultivational
yeah.
practices.
I'm with you. So it can be done in a sort of a hybrid way where you meet with a Taoist master every now and then, but you have a certain sort of practices to do during that time. Um, do you think there's a need for a teacher to be present on a regular basis in like a Taoist school?
Well, for you to acquire the self mastery, until you have direct dialogue with the monologue. So my teachers, I channel over 171 teachers. They're all immortals. Furthermore, my communion with Latsu is on a second by second basis, but I can channel any. And quite frankly, I have mediumship and conversations with spirits and entities all the time. If I leave the lights on, I'm going to end up with a conversation, which always gets me
Mm-hmm.
caught up in like Bruce Lee and Dolores Cannon, Elvis, and you name it. It happens, and I make record of that, and you can find that on my channel if you want to see the Bruce Lee conversation. He gives a great insight as to why his life was taken from him, and the reason behind what he perceives or not perceives as a curse that was taking place through the entity that he had a relationship with. That's a whole nother story. But yes, there is a level of entry level. This is the very problem with the, I think it's the attitude of most people seeking today. There is an effort, a concerted effort to minimize the mastery aspect.
Mm.
It's like, you can do it. Just take a piece here, take a piece there.
Yeah, yeah.
This is a new age spiritual thing. And I'm like, I absolutely agree. Before I had all these, like going back to my story in a nutshell, this is what took place. I did the meditation one day. The next day I channeled Latsu. The following day, that same teacher was like, what the heck? I'll teach you clairvoyance. I'll give you and it is. It's like I attribute my self-realization and getting so deep into this stuff is that I accepted everything at face value as a child.
Mm-hmm.
I would, because it's like, here is the script. Here is the key points you need to do. Follow this instruction and you will acquire whatever it is. And so my mentality from bodybuilding was, if I put in 5 reps at this weight, I will get stronger. And it would show me evidence. The evidence is what is the substance that makes you continually desire to want to acquire that state.
Exactly.
And so it's the same thing with Daoist alchemy. You have to just follow the mastery of it in relation to the process, and you will acquire it just like anyone else that's walked before you, and millions of people have walked before you. But it's actually seeing the evidence. It's like, it's not this transitory delusion. Stay with me. I'm your guru. If you sit here, I promise you'll get the rainbow body and you'll be enlightened enough to another. No, enough of the nonsense. I'm a Pepsi challenge guy. I don't know whether you know what the Pepsi challenge is, but from the 80s in America, they had the Pepsi challenge. So they take two Coke, one Coke, one Pepsi. They'd put a cup over the top of it. Then they'd call someone up from the street and go, I want you to taste these two sodas and tell me which one you prefer. And they'd always go, oh, well, I taste that. Oh, I much prefer this one. And they'd pull the cup up and go, it's Pepsi. Wow, it's the taste beyond the taste, meaning that Coke was garbage and Pepsi was great. But it's the evidence. So when I say I take the Pepsi challenge with someone, I want you to show me the evidence of what it is that you've mastered and acquired within that mastery of whatever it is that you do.
Yeah.
And so first point of validation is the energy potential. Mm-hmm. And that union will come in the form of something as simplistic as psychokinesis, because you're able to feel into these things. Most people I come across do not have their energy activated, even though they're like, oh, yeah, I know everything's energy. When you activate the energy potential within you, all bets are off. It's like hitting on a switch. And it's not a Kundalini experience, because so many people talk about Kundalini with this undertone of be afraid. If you're handed this and you are perfection, you are me, I am you, what are you afraid of? Fear is the very albatross that limits the potential of the seeker.
Mm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah,
And
I'm on board with you. Yeah.
right. So in answer to your question, I always follow the path of teaching until you acquire your highest level of ascension, which is direct source. Mm-hmm. That means that you will have complete dialogue with your knowing state that will reveal the primordial mother. In a spiritual terminology these days, New Age, spiritual, whatever, it's like accessing the Akashic records, the halls of Abente.
I got you.
Source. But you know, most people just get energetically sensitive, and then that's the end of it.
I got you. So exactly, what are the categories of practices that goes into the mastery of your energy? If you were to categorize like meditation, breath work, what are the practices?
Right. First and foremost, I would never refer the most primordial acknowledgement of the now moment as work. This most potent access to your self-realization. And this is the fundamental reason why so many people fall short, because it's a brain group think, mind control, and it's there for a reason. They acquire, it's like you got to put the work in. When I say Wu Wei, I mean effortless action, effortless effort. And people are like, well, Jifu, you have to do. No, I can teach you all day long, Bagua, Tai Chi, you know, levels of Kung Fu, martial arts mastery. That is nothing without the juice. It means nothing. You must acquire the eternal alchemy before you even apply a cherry on top of your, salad or on top of your sundae. You have to acquire the energy potential. And so first it's the physical body, then the energy body, then the spiritual body. Then you go into the sun body, the earth body, the moon body. Then it's the oneness body, the ultimate body, and then being. And so these are ascended levels. And when I say them, you can feel them. And this is your very validation that, holy shit, this guy's not full of shit. I'm feeling into this stuff is real. Yes, it is very real, as it should be. And part of your knowing is the contracting and expanding back to the bellows. And there's no delusional state there. It's like you will move into or move away from your very knowing. Now, I share with this stuff, and we get into sort of a diluted in the weeds sort of thing. But I always agree that it's very important that some of the basic sort of like infantile stuff that people should learn about is identifying with conscious and unconscious process. Because these are part of the oscillating effects of yin and yang within this material state. So what would be an entry level of that is understanding the hypnotic state or trance. This is not the level of ascension I'm talking about when you talk about direct source, but the ability to merge between conscious and unconscious and ultimately solidify and unify it as one is a mastery in of itself. But you should be able to see these types of things. So let's use an example. I'll take someone who gets a quarter. I'll take them down the street to, MGM Grand. And I'll go put that quarter somewhere in the hotel. And they're like, okay. They'll come back and I'm like, now I'm going to use your divinity, what someone would call from a parapsychologist, psychologist, therapist level, hypnotic level, idiomotor response, which would be more diluted or seen within a controlled state as, using divine tools like dowsing forks, pendulums, Ouija board. These are using these concentrated forms to transmit the divinity that goes through you constantly, infinitely, and you're able to harness it to give yourself a prescribed response. you will get information from that. This is happening to everyone at will. We're all interconnected. So you take the ideomotor response of the physical body, and I'll read the energy because the thought in their mind of where the quarter is already there. You now feel the energy, feel into the energy. So when they're moving in the wrong direction, the energy dissipates. When they're moving in the right direction, the energy amplifies. And I could literally just stand there and follow them, and I'll tell them which direction to go to and walk right back to the quarter in a 5,000 room hotel, because it's just nothing but transmission. And someone like you, as sensitive as you, this is what I teach people called body dowsing, where you can now acquire the access to power centers, vortices, portals. These are all grids. You're able to feel all the energy potential, and it's palpable. When you have someone with their eyes open, and I go, look, you got 4 or 5 vortices in your house. And they're like, what are you talking about? We're sitting here talking on a camera. How do you know I have 4 or 5, portals or vortices in my house? Go upstairs to this point, stand there, and tell me what you experience. And they'll come back and go, what the how is it you can see that or feel that and know it's real? And it doesn't become more sobering for someone like yourself who's very much in the intellect and has that struggle because you're highly sensitive, but then the contemplation turns into a corrupted state of bankruptcy because you can't get the evidence that you're looking for. Yet I'm feeling it, but in my mind, it doesn't make any sense. It's not logical. It's not logical because I'm feeling it, but it's not logical. I don't have enough evidence where I'm getting a direct source to guide me to that next level of awareness, because it's just like, as you said, I'm an empath. Now, that's an ultimate goal, right? From a Daoist perspective, the goal of the Daoist rights path is to acquire that level of ascension. And what it happens is when you detach and attach, which is a rite of passage, you will instantly fall into servitude and selflessness. It's your, that's it. You will not be able to fight it. That is the direct access. And from that, you acquire the secret source as an ambassador to planet Earth. From a Taoist cultivating perspective, you acquire the secret source, the superpower, which is the sentience. And from that sentience, even though it's conceptually the very fundamentals of what you know to be true as a human being, most people are detached from it. They're removed from it. They don't even know that it is a part of who they really are, and it is an unlimited potential that is how you attune yourself to humanity. And ultimately, that secret source is empathy. It's not just, oh, I feel people's pain and anger. No, everywhere you look, it's perfection. Perfection manifests. There is nothing that is left unturned. There is nothing that is less or more. Everything is perfection, and you can't fight it. So what happens at that level, you can attempt to conjure up things that might be more symptomatic, problematic for a human being, like a human being's desire as a virile man. You might want to like create an image of a naked woman in your mind. You will not be able to do that. It's gone. And you're like, whoa, holy moly. Yet if you create union with a woman and you have a desire to want to be merged with them in that alchemical process, just a thought of them will arouse you to a level of unconditional love that you have never experienced, not even close, no matter what terminology you want to use. And so there's all these developmental levels, but the 9 that I'm talking about is the progression. And you can move through those progressions very quickly, but it's all comes down to merging the alchemical stuff, the internal stuff, with the external stuff, which is the material, the mortal state of the physical flesh.
Yes.
You merge the two together. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And for somebody like me, I don't know what level I'm at, because I think it's not for me to say what level I'm at. It's for other people from the outside to sort of look and say. But from my level, then if I partake on whatever training that is required, Like, what is the training? How many years does it take? Like, what are the levels and how does it
Well,
work?
it's like I've seen people acquire this state of awareness in a month, 3 months, 6 months. I've never really seen them have to like limp over the finish line in over a year. But
Yeah.
I will truly tell you this: you can acquire it the second you allow yourself to surrender, to
Mhm.
sacrifice. The selfishness reveals the selflessness. And so, it's like if you want to talk about neuroplasticity, the 4 minute mile, right? You ever heard of that? Someone acquired the 4 minute mile, which had never been done before in human history. The second that happened, everyone else was like, well, if he can do it, I can do it. And within the same week, there was thousands of people acquiring this supernatural speed that
Mhm.
was never in human history even thought to be possible. So what
Yes, yeah.
happens is
Hmm.
when you experience, like for example, when you experience what you refer to as a meditation, whatever it is, and you have someone, I think you refer to it as a guided meditation, we are instantly unifying. So the sound that I transmute is the action that we're speaking of. So the second I speak, that breath is the action and inaction that people talk about, which in turn has a rippling effect that affects everything around me.
Mm.
And we use it as a vehicle, and it will start to permeate your physical flesh at a subatomic level. But furthermore, if you want to be redundant and water it down, the sound permeates the commander in chief of your nervous system, which would be the vagus nerve,
Mm.
and you're now instantly accessing a parasympathetic response where
Okay,
things
this
are
is
unraveling.
this is so interesting. So you've heard of the science of commanding and declaring. So there's I landed on this through the works of Saint Germain. I don't know how much you know about Saint Germain, but the whole teaching of the I Am discourses, which links to Jesus' teachings, is actually connected with, obviously there is, thinking and feeling, right? But then there is the speaking and the declaring and the commanding. So the interesting thing with Jesus and with the I am discourses is that there is an emphasis on commanding and declaring using the voice. So that's why Jesus is going around and saying, I am the way, the light, and the truth. And Saint Germain in the I am discourses throughout the books, he has all these affirmations that starts with I am. And he talks about you must feel the authority of the I am, and also commanded in a way that you feel and embody the affirmation. And there is a power to commanding and using your voice. Part of the training of the Taoism which you teach, does it involve this kind of like speaking health, prosperity, abundance to yourself, to your cells? And what is the primacy of this? Because I feel like this is like the highest of maybe even surpassing a normal meditation, where you feel and establish yourself in a very high state of feeling, and you just begin to speak words of power, love, and truth to yourself. What are your
Mhm.
thoughts?
Yeah. Once you sufficiently charge and activate the energy potential,
Mm,
everything is a direct, potent effect.
mm, yeah.
Tendency. So words are literally a substance,
Hmm.
and they're palpable, they're tangible. And so once you speak that, you are now having a rippling effect within this unified or subjective polarizing effect to create the unification. It's
Yes.
so it's so palpable, it's so dense.
As a kid, I was this was sort of my skill. More than anything, it was feeling energy and then translating them into words. So being a like wordsmith or poet, but using the power of the word, right? That's always been my sort of skill that I've had since I was a kid. And there's always in people tell you that you need to remember what it was as a kid, where you sort of became ignited with passion, and you need to find it again and sort of rediscover it and redevelop it. But there was a series called Merlin. I don't know if you watched it, but I so connected with Merlin, and I just had this like sort of imprinted on my mind how powerful I connected with Merlin, and when he was using his word to command the dragon and to create certain spells and certain effects. But it really resonated with me using my voice and using the words that I speak. So yeah, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, no, this is what we call absorbing the riches, right?
Yeah.
So we have like hundreds, thousands of respiratory mastery, but that's when you accumulate the substance, and you can fire it up, and like a loaded gun, drop that word into the barrel, and your speak will fire it off, and it
Mm,
will emanate and affect the change and create a probability of magic
mm,
that will come in the form of manifestation, magic, healing
mm,
through the very words. But
mm.
there must be an ignited state of awareness through the energy potential, and
100%, yeah.
you
That,
must
that
be
and
able
that's
to
so
play with
important.
it. Yeah, it's you have to play with it. It's like, okay, I'm
Yeah,
energized. That means nothing. You
yeah.
must be able to harness that and have imperium over your 50 trillion cells
Mm,
to dictate and command, as you put it, in any way you choose to
mm.
create. This is a mastery.
And it's so interesting because that's such a high level of mastering, isn't it? Like Jesus sort of is speaking with a voice of authority, right? So it's maybe you could conceptualize it in a masculine kind of way because it is about commanding, right? Like the feminine, you feel, you charge yourself, and then with the masculine, you sort of bring that forward, bring it out. So there's like an authority, there's like a feeling of power that comes with speaking. And I have found after I recite or speak certain affirmations from the I Am Presence teachings of Saint Germain or Jesus teachings, when I speak them, it is different state to what I enter when I'm doing Reiki or energy healing. The Reiki and the energy healing is a very gentle, loving, expansive, opening kind of energy, whereas the act of speaking is then sort of you create these vortices of power, and you feel them in your voice, you feel them in the way you speak, you feel them in the way your mind is kind of like a becomes like a sword, like a tunnel, and it just is piercing through things, if that makes sense.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, like the path of harnessing the attention intention, and then you will see it. You will see it because what we call the Bai Hui, which is the top of the Dantian, you are harnessing that divinity, and it's coming through these windows into this material state. And there's actually 9 eyes within the upper dantian, not 3, which most people refer to. And when you're able to harness that substance, simple things like I get a lot of students to start mastering simple things like moving the direction of the flame within a candle using this substance.
Mm,
And you'll be shocked at how quickly you can acquire that state. You take a couple of candles, light it, and then put your attention, intention to it, and the flame will move at will with that substance, which furthermore, as you embody it and imbue it through the words, now you're off to the races. I would also bring your attention to an incantation, because we use incantations all the time. That's part of magic. And so one incantation comes to mind from one of my teachers, the Jade Emperor. You'll love this one. A power abundant in its giving you will receive, unifying the body with the spirit with the energy, bringing heaven to earth, transcending one is all is one, revealing perfection manifest. That is your gift. That is your offering. That is your gift. That is your offering. That is your gift. That is your offering. Sit with that, my friend.
mhm.
And furthermore, when you understand that, if you take your Lao Gong points like this, let's take your Lao Gong points. These are the Lao Gong points.
Okay.
You understand energy. You felt
Yeah.
that starting to merge. And now acquire the substance. It's palpable. So if you want to play with it,
Hmm.
you play with it. No, not as slow. And when it's too slow, it's not slow enough. You must merge with the individual imprinted frequency of every potential. And then your sensitivity, which is off the charts already, will go another thousandfold. So when you merge with it, all of a sudden, what do you notice? Describe it to yourself and to myself, to the audience, what you're experiencing.
I feel a magnetic sort of wave or pressure between my hands. And I mean, I've been feeling the magnetic sort of pressure and wave in my heart and chest as well. So it's sort of spreading in my chest, and when I'm holding my hand, it's also in between my hands.
Right, right. Now, if I just imbue the center point, now, if you apply a little bit of the tactile effects of your physical body, your hands, and merge them to the center point, you can describe what you're experiencing.
When you say merge them to the center point, I
The
think
center point, go ahead.
center point of my hands.
Well, there is a center point to what you're experiencing right now. So between your two hands is the center point.
Okay.
Instantly. That particular color is a vibrant lemon color, and it has a evidence of some type of gold pixie dust, which is interesting, which is also brings us back to high levels of ascended states of awareness, because we present these elements through our visual abilities to see a state of ascended knowing that would be more reflectant of divinity or unification. So when you bring these to a point, you have a center point between your hands,
Yes.
right? So as you slowly bring them to a point, describe what you're experiencing.
It feels like a laser from the center of my left hand and a laser from the center of my right hand, sort of coming together to the center point in between my hands. And then that center point in turn, is like sort of beaming back into each of my hands, the left hand and the right hand. And I'm holding that beam. It's like a central beam at the center of my left hand and right hand, which feels like a pressure or vibration at the both of the hands. Yeah.
Right, right. Pressure, pressure, evidence, which is so important as you acquire this. Your Sherlock to your Watson is to always find evidence that is self-realized, not someone's talking head or spoken word.
Hmm.
As you attempt to apply it, the more and more you merge your hands to the center point, you'll experience something else once you describe that.
Now it's like a pulse.
And these are great tuning forks. We call them the barometers, right?
Now the
And
pulse is like a wave. It's like there's a wave and it's like going in and out and it's pulsing.
right, yeah, right. Now, what's interesting is the evidence to the average seeker looking in on this conversation, be like, these guys are holding their hands in the air. There is substance between our hands that are self-evident and are very dense and have their own signature and their own vibratory and frequential resonance. And that is what we're talking about when we talk about sensory perception, is being able to develop these skills. Now, this would fall in line with what you were talking about before when it comes to sacred geometry or things of that nature. We're forming a shape. Everything has a shape. Everything has an emanated auric field that will present itself in these sort of variables of colors that will give you an indication of what it is and what it means in this present moment.
Hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I'm with you. So
Yeah.
you talked about moving a candle so that you merge with this center point, and then what do you do? Do you feel love and
Well,
want with
no,
the
it's not about feeling anything
okay,
because it's already there. So
uh-huh.
what you're doing when you're moving the candles is, all right, San Qing said, light a couple of candles. All right. The second you put your attention, intention to that flame, you will feel the evidence of this divinity that will form within your upper dantian. And furthermore, your eyes will start to fill and they'll be like laser beams as Superman. There is that substance, and you'll be able to move that substance between the flames and flicker them at will.
So
And
it's
so,
more of an intention rather than feeling
well,
anything.
no, because you are going to feel it. It's all none of this is like it's like inventing the wheel. You're not reinventing the wheel. This is already there. Everything that you're experiencing, their story is already written. It's now. There's nothing for you to conjure or create it in your mind,
Mhm.
but the evidence of that will be the energy potential. Now,
I see.
for you to see it, you this is where you must develop the clear elements that I was talking about to activate the imagination to its potential. So it's like,
You're going from the future to the present, kind of you seeing what's already happened. So you're not pushing to achieve, right? You're kind of going backwards in the
well, well,
imagination.
well, well, you're not. It's just the now moment. You don't have to create something from the future.
Okay.
What you have to be able to accept is it's already there.
Yeah.
There is nothing for you to create or destroy.
Hmm.
It's abundant, timeless, endless, limitless, infinite.
So,
Does this make
so once you go into the center point, you already accept what is. Then do you use your voice? Do you command or no, or just sort of observe?
audibly or inaudibly is an option. It all
Hmm.
has the same palpability.
Hmm.
So you can be audible or inaudible because you are the present moment,
Yeah.
primordial mother. You harness that energy potential. But it becomes problematic when you don't have clear evidence of direct source that keeps validating.
Hmm.
It's like, okay, I'm doing this, but I'm not getting a dialogue that then ultimately gives me the monologue. This is the key. You must have. That's like when you said, "Well, you need a teacher," or you absolutely that teacher is you.
Hmm.
That's part of like the path of Taoism is really it's almost mimicking a Gnostic path of self-realization. Yet there is a progression to that. So that teacher may initially start in the form of San Qing, but it ultimately ends in the form of you.
Hmm.
Does that make sense?
I'm with you. Yeah.
And it's like there is no right or wrong, but there must be a progression. And if you're not continually validating it and
Yeah.
returning to whole,
Hmm.
then it becomes problematic. It's just like, oh yeah, I can feel a bunch of energy,
I'm
and I wish to
hun
just get
hun
out of my body. I got to get out of my body.
I'm
It's driving me.
100%, I'm 100% with you. So let me get this laser focus clear. Um, and because this applies to everything, right? It's not just about moving candles, it's about
Right.
focusing on each of your organs and accepting that it's already whole, and then sort of speaking which further charges or commands the cells in your body. So you can do that with sort of your mind, your body, with your relationships, with everything. So this practice is so essential. So I want to make sure I get it right. So you first go into the state, right, of wholeness,
Mm-hmm.
but you didn't use the word love. You go into the center point between two forces. So you can do that with your hands. You can also do that with your energy, right? You don't have to use your hands. You can sort of
No,
bring your
no.
attention and intention to the center point,
Mm-hmm.
and then from that point, then you said you don't, because in Reiki you feel your hands to transmit energy. That's why I wanted to make sure, is it an acceptance of what is already there, or is it an act of feeling what is
Well,
already there?
that's where you separate because you're like, oh, I've seen it. It's almost corny, you know, or you know, dude, I'll make you feel energy. It's just like that mic, right? Have you got anything in front of you, like a cup, an
I
object? You got
I,
anything?
I have this bottle.
Okay, all right. So feel the bottle
Yeah,
with your hands. Feel it. Feel
yeah,
how it feels, the weight of it, whatever it is, right?
yeah.
Okay. So you have an idea of what that weight is, what it feels like.
Mm-hmm.
Now put it on the table,
Mm-hmm.
right? Now, just for effects, you can put your hands like this
Mm-hmm.
because it's all about it. Now, you can already feel something going on. There's something going on because I'm already tuning into that frequency. Now I'm going to imbue that bottle at a subatomic level in 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Now you describe what you experienced and then go to picking the bottle up and you explain what you're experiencing.
Should I explain what I'm experiencing now or pick
Yeah,
up?
sure. Go. It doesn't matter in what level.
Well, I'm feeling the similar vibration that I was feeling. I feel a little bit of pressure, which is like more focused, like laser focused at the center of my right hand, just this very particular center. Um, Pretty much that's it for now.
Now the energy potential is take your fingers like this.
Hmm.
They're like forks.
Hmm.
Now, if you point them towards the bottle,
Hmm.
all you got to do is point them. Don't do that. You point them because the
Yeah.
tips is when you start to accumulate, right? You being a Reiki guy, hands are evident. So if you have the bottle, you can feel and palpate what you're experiencing. And as you draw your fingers closer, describe what you're experiencing. As you draw your fingers closer to the object, explain it. Slow it down because you're merging into different layers of energy potential.
Hmm. Okay.
Describe it.
From here again, it feels like a bit of pressure on my left hand,
Mm-hmm.
center of my left hand.
Mm-hmm.
As I'm, and then now let's get closer. It's become slightly more activating, like energy. Like I'm slightly more activated.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I feel some buzzing, some vibration on my hands, but nothing like too particular. Now my left hand is getting a little bit more, like I feel more, not pain, but like kind of similar experience to pain. Like,
Density, like a
yeah,
almost like burning your fingertips with ice, and then you pull it away. Does that make sense?
yeah, yeah, exactly. It's kind of like yeah, like a feeling of hot
Freezing.
and cold. It
Mm-hmm.
goes hot and cold. Now, like my left hand is feeling more activity. This sort of wave.
Mm-hmm. Now you already have evidence of how that bottle felt. Why don't you slowly hold it and pick it up and tell me what you experience?
This kind of wave of cold going through my body. It's a wave of like almost like icy, icy vibrations. I'm just using random words to sort of make sense of my experience. There's like a cold feeling going through it,
Right, right.
going through my
But
hands.
unified wholeness. This always comes back to the primordial womb. The biggest thing that you are limiting yourself with is fear and then allowing yourself to release the inhibitions. You've heard this 1,000 times. It's not the first time you've heard this, but it's like you go, well, I've done it.
Mm.
No, you have not. It's almost a liberating moment. Like you're just touching the
Mm.
little thread. What you're actually in the middle of is like equivalent to a tornado, but you're not even experiencing the potential of it because of these limiting factors. The second you dissolve those two factors I talk about, everything, and you're super sensitive. This is the thing. You have no idea how much you are impeding and limiting the potential that you have
Mm.
from these two factors. Does that make sense?
Yeah, actually, the feeling of cold is so much more now. I feel like I've put my hand in cold water.
Yeah. And that's it. And that is what we call a complete imbued, imprinted state that is now altered at a subatomic level.
And like my hands now feel even like a waves of like ice sort of going, because normally it should be warm because my hands are normally warm, but now it's like waves of cold, icy feeling going around.
And you see, you're getting the true source of all things because you're so
Mhm.
used to tapping into that material. Yang is a reflection of yin, which
Mhm.
ultimately is the evidence of the polarizing magnetism and electric charge of this material state. This is the evidence. So yang is a reflection of yin. And so this is what creates this. This is all material. And what happens with most light workers and energy workers is they spend their jing. The first thing I always ask them is, okay, what are you doing here? I want to master the energy. I want to master healing. Okay. How do you feel at the end of your day? I'm exhausted. It's a long day. It's a hard day. And so when they're doing body work, they're transmitting energy, all this type of stuff, they are expending their jing, their life force, as opposed to tapping into
Mhm.
perfection. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah, I'm with you.
And the energy people do it all the time. That's a very common community thing where they screw themselves, and most of them don't even want. Like channeling again is the same thing. They resort to tapping out whatever exists within their physical flesh, and it's problematic because most energy healers or healers don't live that long. They just burn the candle. They're done. It's over. And it first started with this desire to be in servitude and selflessness, and it ends with I can't even pay my bills, and I feel like I've been completely consumed by something, which would be more reflectant of a term that Bob Monroe. Have you ever heard of Bob
Yeah.
Monroe?
Uh-huh. Yeah.
So Bob Monroe is when I mentioned Tom Campbell earlier. Tom Campbell was one of Bob Monroe's apprentices
Yeah. Yeah.
for 60 years. And so he referred to it, and I just, we look at everything as frequential from a Taoist perspective. So we are low frequency, that would come in the form of something that potentially someone would consider ominous, negative, dark, whatever you want to call it. You use your dark, you mentioned the dark shadows, the dark self, another term created by a more deficient and conflicted person by the name of Carl Jung. He would talk about the darkness, the shadow work, and it's like it keeps you in your head, my friend.
Mm.
All
Yeah.
this stuff is title, it's identity, it's all these things. And then people go, well, you're a Daoist priest, you're identifying with it. It was nothing more than the tools. When I talk about, I experienced everything immediately before I even went down the path of understanding the mechanisms of Daoist alchemy. I'd already experienced it all. I already activated it all. All I wanted to do was, through my teaching of Lao Tzu teaching me, and then all the ancient practices within the lineages, was give people a repeatable method that they can acquire this state also.
Hmm.
So there's two ways you can acquire the state that I'm speaking of. You can master it through the alchemical process that's been handed down from generation to generation for thousands of years as a Taoist, or you can be instantly realized.
Mm.
And that happens. It absolutely happens. There is no limit and there is no condition, because that doesn't exist.
And sort of my final thoughts, because we've been speaking for a long time. It's been such a great conversation. Thank you for
Yeah,
coming.
yeah.
But my final thought is the idea that, your karma at a certain stage of your life ripens. So there's something happens, some planetary alignment or whatever you've done in the past, whether it's
Mhm.
this life or past life, there's a certain period where the karma ripens, right? So I go and continue doing the spiritual practice, perhaps adding a bit of more structure to it and finding more how to harmonize my body, my spiritual body. But also, like, there is an idea that there's a certain timing where this thing is supposed to happen, right? And when that timing comes, like nothing can stop it, right? Because the karma is a kind of a, I don't know how you say it, it's a buildup of energy which suddenly it erupts. So should we worry about our ascension or just actually enjoy the ride and wait for the time to come and then enjoy the ascension when it happens?
You see, that's an interesting, perplexing moment, because that comes in the construct of a belief system. So for a Taoist, it starts with inquiry, then curiosity, contemplation. You then nurture that into hope. That hopium that you nurture, you blossom that into a belief system. The belief system is only met with validation to a knowing through experiential moment.
Mhm.
It can only be validated that way.
Yeah.
So what I'm saying is, if you come from biology, psychology, neurology, astrology, you are limited at best. You must realize that we refer back to the Taoist path. The lens of reality is the form of yin and yang. That is your deciphering code for perfection. You
Mm.
lay that template down upon this electromagnetism and you find that center point, the vesica, the center point.
Yeah.
You will find it in everything. There is no exception. And I believe that that is what you were talking about when you came to sacred geometry and this
Hmm.
uh, uh, Robert
Dr. Robert J.
Hill.
Gilbert. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
He talks
Have
about
you?
in biogeometry, actually, they also talk about the centering quality. And they have techniques, certain shapes that they use to emanate the centering quality. And I'm really lucky that my library is actually a church, that and churches have centering quality effect when you go into them, like churches that are, I don't
Oh,
know,
yeah.
maybe this is 200 300 years old, because it's full of sacred geometry. And I do feel like, yeah, my soul is centered and expanded. So the centering effect is really interesting. And but you're talking about it in a form of internal alchemy, right? But it's also
Mhm.
important to see aspects of it in design. uh,
Well, it
bas-
becomes evident all when you acquire the alchemy. You're everything.
Mhm.
So when I refer to body dowsing, that is the ability. Your sensory perception is unlimited.
Mhm.
So you instantly are able to identify your external through your internal. You can
Mhm.
feel the energy potential of everything,
Mhm.
all different states. And that's part of that path of creating the energy potential through your attention intention, and then developing it from vibratory to frequential to the resonance that you can hold, because you must be able to hold it or it's transitory, it's delusion.
Mhm.
You must be able to maintain that frequency, and that's the resonance, that's the beauty, that's the mastery, because you have created a container that can hold that. Because what happens with any path of self-realization,
Mhm.
if you don't nurture the mortality aspect, and we always speak on this, let the man who's never left his village, let him know he's seen the world. It's right here. And that also is remind the man mortality is real. And so that physical flesh can only be met. Many indigenous practices, most people associate Buddhism, Taoism as the same thing. No, not even close. A Buddhist path is walking the path of a pile of dirt covered in diamonds. They remove another diamond looking for more dirt. It's like, as my dear friend, the Buddhist monk Martin would say, the dukkha, the distortion.
Mm.
They're on that constant path. They're not distracted by the physical flesh. They're like, we'll burn it out. It's an avatar. Come and go. I'm on to the next one. A Taoist path is very clear. It's a pile of diamonds covered in dirt. We remove the diamond, remove the dirt to find another diamond. And so you merge with that. You bring immortality into this material state and you solidify it, which furthermore brings reference to the Taoist canons, where many Taoist teachers and priests we have recorded evidence of people that live 200, 300, 500, 1,000 years. And it's possible. I know this. When you start getting down into the roots of gene expression and epigenetics, understanding the simplicity of how to create that symbiotic relationship of turning on and off genes, what it comes from. The simplicity of epigenetics is the definition. You're a product of your environment, and your attention intention can switch these genes on and off at will, which furthermore is part of what that alchemy does. The alchemy is creating that dominion. The self-receptors on the skin acquire and activate the pituitary, thalamus, and pineal gland. And that's the alchemical factory that we call the three treasures within the upper dantian. That self-activation, we use the culture medium, the blood, to shuttle the magic into whatever way we want to commandeer the 50 trillion cells, which is 0.07 millivolts of electric potential. And that's how you commandeer it, through these levels of awareness.
What I'm hearing is that there's a lot of physical practices involved, right? It's like if you're pulsing the energy up, you bring it up to the highest centers, you're activating certain organs in the body. So it's a very, as well as it's an energetic, it's also a very physical purification, which maybe you mentioned the Buddhists don't focus as much. Interestingly enough, I've done some work on the Essenes, and Jesus apparently was an Essene because he was baptized by John the Baptist, who was an Essene. They were really into, first and foremost, they had this saying that unless you go through the earthly mother, you cannot go to the heavenly father. And they had very intense purification practices, such as like the 30-day fast that Jesus does comes from an Essene practice, but also grounding, earthing, eating very strict diet, and getting sunlight, using breath work, and also talking and making songs to the angel of the air, the angel of the sun, the angel of the earth, the angel of the fire, which is like the sunlight. So the four angels, and communing with these angels. But they really emphasize physical purification, and baptism was a symbol of physically and energetically purifying yourself. So it's interesting. There's some links there I see between Taoism and the Essene path.
Mm-hmm.
So where am I
Yeah.
going with this?
Well, I mean, you mentioned fasting, which is
Yeah,
what we call resting,
yeah.
and the ultimate acknowledgement of that within embodying and immortalizing this physical flesh is to extend your re-up, extend your experience. So you're merging with that. So your life force, your jing, can be maximized to extend that path.
Mm-hmm.
100, 200, however you set fit. Right now, my teachers are very clear. If I continue the path I'm on, I will live to 172. That's just an average state. That's average. And quite frankly, evidence within longevity today in 2025 makes it very clear that if you nurture your gene expression and you follow a certain path, the average lifespan of anyone on Earth today will be 120 years.
Yes.
And that's without altering very much of anything. But fasting is we call it resting, is an evidence-based, one meal every other day is the ultimate for a Taoist seeker. And you'll feel more energy than you know what to do with. And you will be as strong and as creative as anything you've ever experienced.
What's the longest fast you've done, and how did you feel?
30 days, I felt amazing because you're
30 days.
Yeah, it's
Wow.
breathing. It's primordial breathing. I'm not
Uh-huh.
breathing the physical body.
Yeah.
I'm breathing from the unified state, the primordial mother. It no longer requires, like when I get some students to do specific practices, one of them is where you're able to draw in and hold your breath, and you walk the primordial circle 81 times. And every time, and it's a circle that would probably be the span of the seat that I'm sitting in. So it's like about this wide. You have to walk that. And every time you think you're walking too slow, you have to go even slower. And you do not release the breath until you hit 81.
81 circles, like a spiral.
81, but not running. Every time you think you're too slow, you go even slower. So this is what we call absorbing the riches. And so you become this tuning fork, and it starts to saturate from the feet to the legs, to the lower dantian, through the hands, through the body, whatever you feel, because most energy people, they feel a lot of energy, but if you to put their attention intention, most of the energy is concentrated within their head, their hands, and their feet, because on a neurological level, that's the easiest way to access an accumulated, like, evidence-based charge of potential. Whereas that, whatever that energy you're feeling, when you master it, you feel it through your whole body equally. There is no limitation to how you feel it. Whereas if you struggle with a neuroscientist, they will tell you that it's impossible for you to feel these energies because your body's not sympathetically innervated that way. Like, for example, the third eye. You feel the pressure and the accumulation of the energy potential within the third eye, yet a neuroscientist would be, that's rubbish. There's no neurology there to give any basis of validation. You are just having what we call a psychosomatic experience.
Yeah.
and this is the very dismissal of these practices. But when you accumulate these dantians, the misconception for most is that you must always acquire, where the Daoist path is the lower dantian, is where you harness and cultivate the energies. That is nonsense. You will develop it in the middle dantian and the upper dantian equally. And there's a fear-based premise behind that, which is the very reason why people never get to their ascended levels of awareness, because people teach these practices always deviate from the equal distribution of that. So it's like concentrating. When you hold that breath, what presents itself to me is the backdrop is gone. You have a green screen. Your backdrop is gone. All I see is darkness. It's void. Wherever I put my attention intention, it emanates divine white light, and then it will show itself within its energy potential, excess or deficient, and through my attention intention, it forms what we call the diamond of perfection.
Yes.
The concentration of that energy forms that center point. And then from that center point is all creation. And that's how you heal anything instantaneously. And it starts with the breath.
What do you think of a practice? If somebody was to just to do one practice, one spiritual practice, which was just to sit in stillness and emanating compassion, emanating the light, do you think that one practice is enough? And if not, why not?
No, because you have a preconceived belief system of what reality is by defining it as compassion. That doesn't exist. The universe doesn't have a moral compass. Perfection presents itself. It will not come in the form of an identity or a title for what you perceive it as being. That's where you become limited. Does that make sense?
So in the I Am Presence teachings, there's like three sort of qualities you try to develop. One is love at the heart center. The other is power at the belly center, right? And then there's wisdom around the head. So with the heart, I think you would probably agree with me that loving stillness is enough to activate the heart and compassion. But I think where you had maybe trouble with just saying that's enough of a practice is that it doesn't work with the sexual energy and the power center, right? I mean, it does to an extent, but it's not exactly the same state of being as love and compassion. So power is a different set of being, and it requires a different ways of developing that and different practices. And then wisdom, I mean, gets quite in a I don't know, in an ascension journey, wisdom is at the highest states, right? Like it takes a very long time, maybe for some people, to get to the points of wisdom. But yeah, what are your thoughts on sort of three essential practices? If you were to
Mhm.
tell people there's three essential practices that develop the three main dantians, power, love, and wisdom,
Mhm.
what would that involve?
Mhm. So the three dantians that we speak of within Taoism, upper, middle, lower.
Yeah.
Upper is the sun and is the keeper of supreme purity, which is the transmission of the highest form of light. And
Mm,
so that emanates all things related to light and the relationship of the sun imbued within the physical body. That is the energy, that is the center of all that
hmm
information. Then you go to the center, the middle dantian, which is the earth, and that emanates nothing more than information. And the keeper of that is jade purity. And he reveals what we call the red ruby, which is the pure essence of unconditional love. You activate that through what we call the observation of the death of a star and the rising of the red phoenix through black hole energy. And people are like, what? That sounds absolutely nonsense. No, you access unlimited potential because it's like I've been teaching this for decades, and all of a sudden now you get these physicists that are like, did you know that within everything, within this entanglement that Albert Einstein proclaimed as being the spooky action, this substance that connected everything. Max Planck defined it as an entangled state or Planck unit or more 0 point energy. This is the eclipse or the lip of a black hole is the entry level to abundant, timeless, endless, limitless, infinite, because the void is not darkness. It's not an absorption. That is the absorption is yin. The emission is yang. The void, the completion, the primordial womb is all things. So that darkness is actually light,
Mm,
but people perceive it as an idea that it is dark and it is ominous and it is evil, which keeps them trapped in these belief systems that are so limited. And
yeah.
ultimately, the lower dantian is the magic, and it is the keeper of the moon energy, and the relationship of that is with highest purity. And so all the magic is emanated from that. So it's like everything to do with energy, which would be relevant or parallel to you calling it the
hmm
power in information and then light. And so these
hmm
are similar terms, probably a little different in cultivation, because when we link yin and yang, we create a container that accesses all the primordial mother energy and the lower dantian, which most people refer to as a yang furnace, the place where they burn the steam from the fire and water. We do not use those elements to create perfection. This is the misconception, and so many people get burnt out because they focus their attention on the fire, on the yang, which it always ends badly, which is imminent demise and death and mortality, which people get too focused on, which is, alas, part of the re-up.
So, what is like the main practice of developing the power center? Do you call it the third dantian or the third one, right?
Yeah, the lower dantian, the third
Lower, yeah.
dantian, first, second, third, sure.
What's the best
Um,
practice to develop that?
well, there's a development of each dantian has 81 chambers, and you develop those chambers, and they always move between three elements: platinum, gold, and silver. And that particular dantian, the dominant element is silver. And so you merge that element into the variables of each dantian as you continue to ascend, and it fortifies it. it will become an actual hard formed state. You will be able to press and feel the concentration of that energy, and with the breath, sip the breath. It accumulates what we call the nectar, which is the saliva, and as it drops down into the lower dantian, it forms and blossoms that fortified primordial energy. So there's a development. If I was to give you any of your audience just a starting training, is you breathe for 9, you hold for 9, you release for 9. Now that sounds sort of like, that kind of like nothing. Oh, well, no. If you do that 81 times a day, you're going to feel like a bubble head where you can't contain the amount of energy that's saturating your physical body. And then you move from that into concentrating the energy into the lower dantian, the middle dantian, the upper dantian. But first you must form the evidence, and that's the absorption of the riches.
So you breathe in the way you described, 9 seconds in, 9 seconds hold, 9 seconds out, and then you sort of go to the center of your third dantian, right? And you concentrate that energy, and then you sort of put an intention, and then you breathe in that centering.
Well, you won't have to put an intention. It's the evidence will be there.
Just
like
by
a lot of people that teach like Nigong will say, listen, don't use your intention. It doesn't exist. Don't use your imagination. It's ridiculous. I'm not a fan of that type of like limiting cultivational practice. You will instantly see evidence of the energy potential within your physical body, and furthermore, through your vision, it will start to present itself. And for you, for example, we've already identified some of the excess and deficiencies. There's a level of cultivation that we go through to acquire that. But generally speaking, you're not going to have to do anything. If you follow the instruction of what I've given you, and you enter the center point of the lower dantian, it will start to accumulate itself.
Just bringing your attention to the center point of the...
All you do is say it. Just as you spoke on, the words are power. The words command instant access. All you say, audibly or inaudibly, I now enter the center point of the lower dantian.
And then feel that with your attention.
Say it and then explain to me what you feel.
Go now to the center point of the lower dantian. As I said it, my attention straight away went to the lower dantian, like my feeling and my attention. So that it followed the words.
Now measure what it is, because everything, the currency of this reality is energy potential.
I have a lot of power right now within my lower dantian. I've accumulated. I don't know if you have the same reading of that, but there's a lot of power there.
You're wired for sound. You're wired.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
There's a lot of power there, right? I mean, at this point in time, in the past, it wasn't, but right now there is a lot.
Yeah. And then you concentrate.
Mm-hmm.
And it becomes like a kneaded piece of dough in the center of your gut that is now formed itself. It's substantive. It is dense. It is tangible. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I want to really end this with like the tragedy of what's happening with our society, where there's pornography and there's so many ways that is sexual energy is escaping our energy and our body, and doctors are doing a terrible job just saying, that this has no negative effect. In fact, it has benefits. And I mean, I'm not there to blame anyone, but doctors should take a lot of responsibility for a lot of the damage done. But also being somebody from my generation, obviously, like I watched pornography, and I think most people did in my generation, and it's taken me a very long time of like coming out of it. And now I'm like in a place where I don't watch it anymore, but it was a very challenging thing to do. So what do you, if somebody is listening to this conversation and there's no hope for them, obviously, if they're releasing all that energy, because they're one of their centers, their internal battery is just not there, right? So they're missing on this whole power and vitality within themselves that they're not tuning into. what's the best way of coming out of this culture of releasing our prana with pornography and with lust?
Well, you see, one of the biggest misconceptions of any type of ancient indigenous practice for energy cultivation is within the first incantation of the Tao Te Ching, the way to walk is not the way. The name that is named is not the name. Tao is both named and nameless. So what does that mean? We refer back to the bellows. You are contracting and expanding at the same time. You're all things and nothing at the same time. That means you're abundant, timeless, endless, limitless, infinite. If you form your belief systems around the material state and mortality is real to you, then you will be spent, you will be limited. So when it comes to sex magic, Taoist sex magic, oh, that's a whole nother 5 episodes.
Yeah.
But quite frankly, how you harness that energy starts with the seed of your belief system, because if you believe that you are limited, then you will expend whatever source that you have, and through that practices, you will find that the adverse effect, because you're attempting to absorb it and not release it as it is naturally part of you transmuting. The skill is transmuting it. When you have a sexual release, your ability to transmute it back in as whole is part of the mastery. And the physical is the lowest form of transmutation. It's the easiest. Yet most people go, well, I need to be abstinent. I need to walk the path of a priest. I cannot ever have sex again. All these types of, it's nonsensical. It's nonsense. But most people will teach this method as part of you ascending. What you're doing is you're affecting the polarizing effects of this material state, and you're seeding it with a fear that if you leak this, as you mentioned, the words were leak your energy, that there will be eminent negative effects to that. That comes from nurturing your belief system. As you put it, karma is nothing more than a byproduct. Karma is the very foundation of how we lay Daoist magic. That's very important. So if you're transmitting and casting magic within this material state, because it's a polarizing state of electromagnetism, anyone affected by that will have a similar belief system. Most people that occupy this realm do not unify. They are not unified. They are not aware of their internal power, and they adjust to the effects of mental, emotional. The 3 ingredients of this state is thoughts, feelings, and emotions. The second you realize they are all one, things change. But if you subject yourself to them as part of the human condition, your humanness will be subject to the effects of a unified state of awareness. When I cast magic, whatever your deficiency is, it will present itself. Whatever your biggest fear is will present itself as the energy closes in to seal the loophole for you. Now, what will it do? It will commandeer the energy to get an acquired effect. That's the purpose of it. But the side effect is the collateral damage for most people is because they're living in this belief system, they will be presented with their most deficient state by being exposed to that frequency, because everything is vibratory, frequential, and ultimately the end result is holding that resonance. So if you walk through your path being energetically activated, yet you're commandeered by your intellect and your mental emotional state, it can be problematic because you will constantly be in deficiency. Karma is nothing more than that. It's what you have generated as your reality. If you walk under a ladder and you believe you're going to have good luck, you're going to have good luck. If you walk under a ladder and you believe that you're going to have bad luck, you're the creator. You're the creator of your reality, which furthermore reminds me, I always remind people, you're the master keeper creator of all things. So you take it back to the simplicity of mastering all this vibratory frequential states of awareness. Everything is frequency. And the the spattering of, insight through the intellect is the very distraction
Mm.
for a human's path. Does
Yeah.
that make sense?
Yeah, man. Thank you so much. We've been speaking for, it feels like nothing, but we've been speaking for God knows how long. I think over like we're close to 3 hours. In
Oh my
20
goodness.
in 20 minutes time we'll be close to 3 hours, I think. But I mean I can keep going if you want. I'm super stimulated by the conversation. I've learned so much and I have more questions than answers now, and I love to speak to you again. And it's been a
Yes.
wonderful, enlightening experience. Thank you for coming to the show, man.
My pleasure, my brother. And you are me, I am you. From my heart to yours, which is one, I love you.
I love you too, man. Thank you.
And that really is the most potent awareness of self-realization.
Mm.